breathe, Bill.
Yeah, hang on a second. It's still setting up the webinar on YouTube. Hang on a second. Here we go. Good afternoon and welcome from Connect Studios to today's webinar and town hall. To get us started, let's introduce our Chief Executive Officer for Connects, Bill Yannick. Bill?
Thanks, Kerry. Welcome everyone to our, well, for this year, our first DE&I webinar, and a lot of good stuff about to happen. I need to take care of a couple housekeeping matters, and then we'll dive right in with our excellent panel and our guest speaker. On the one side, I need to make a quick legal disclaimer, and then give a little quick vision about our DE&I efforts here at Connects. So to start, for our attendees, and we do have a large audience out there, really appreciate you joining us, is that we want to be clear that the comments and opinions expressed in this webinar and by our panel, our presenter, Sherry Darden, and any member participants do not necessarily reflect the official position of Connects. We are, however, committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion within Connect staff and membership and within the facilities maintenance profession generally. We hope this webinar will enable an open and honest discussion of how we can all make that happen. So that does not necessarily, or some of the things don't necessarily reflect a position of Connects, but what does? So to get this started, as your CEO, I always think we need to go back to the beginning to our ultimate strategic end. It's that you, our members, and our stakeholders have a competitive advantage through your membership in Connects. And within that strategic end, we really have four areas where we take part or offer to you. One is our Connects Marketplace. One is our Connects Professional Development, our Connects Thought Leadership, and our Connects Core Values. And I think it doesn't take a whole stretch to see how diversity, equity, and inclusion play into all that. But, and I borrowed this from one of my team members, so apologies to Tangela Chance, who brought this up in one of our meetings. But I think it boils down to, hopefully, that you know that you belong at Connects. And however we discuss DEI, whatever we work on with DEI through our various committees and events, we want to be open and inclusive and know that you belong here. It's a safe and open environment. And the other two areas before I delve into our panel is just this. As an association, there are really two areas to look at in DEI and why this is so important. One, it's the right thing to do. And we've all seen all the events that's happened over the last year, good, bad, and otherwise, but it's the right thing to do to engage in this discussion. And secondly, I guess more selfishly for the association is, as Connects, as a community, we are either going to grow as Connects or we're going to wither away over time. And one of the ways we're going to grow, and certainly a very crucial way, is through D&I initiatives and efforts. And I'll finish with this. A lot of exciting things going on at Connects. In addition to working our way through this pandemic, we have our Women in Action, which has been very active throughout the last year and continue to go onward and upward. Our young professionals, and now this, our newest committee at Connects. And we have three dynamic leaders that you're about to meet in a moment. And we have a subject matter expert that's guiding us through that. So with that, welcome to this webinar today. Welcome back to Connects. We certainly know you belong here, and someone who always belongs at Connects. She's a member of our board. She's Chief Operating Officer for FEXA, and she's one of our co-chairs for our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee. Please welcome me and join me in welcoming Kim Goey to our webinar. Kim?
Thank you, Bill. What a high energy introduction. I can't top that. Thank you. Super excited to be here. I'm so excited this moment has come. It has been a long time coming on so many levels. And for me, both personally and professionally, I am the daughter of an immigrant, one who was embarrassed by his heritage and his differences, and going from sort of being raised in that embarrassment to today where I embrace and leverage my differences has really brought me to where I am, not only personally, but also professionally. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm an executive, and in all of these roles, DEI space matters. It matters for my kids, it matters for your kids, it matters for our community, and it matters for our businesses and our industry as a whole. So I really believe this is a culture. This is something that you are. It's not just something you do. It's something that you are. It's not political. It is human. We are here to create a community, a connection, a sense of belonging for all, to really harness our differences to drive more innovation, more access, more growth in our personal and professional lives. So thank you all for being here. It's a pivotal moment in Connex's history. Thank you, Bill, for providing the platform for us to launch this incredibly important initiative. And so with that, I'm really delighted to introduce my first fellow Rockstar co-chair, Mandy Ranahan, CEO and founder of Freshcode.ca, not the grocery store. Mandy, can you introduce yourself and just share a little bit about why you're here? Oh, Mandy, my dear.
Hey,
Thank you. There she is.
You know what? I'm never usually muted, ever. Okay. Hi, everybody.
You can't mute Mandy.
Yeah, you can't mute me. Thanks, everybody. You know, I'm going to share with Kim and Bill's enthusiasm. I'm just delighted to be here. I'm delighted to share my past experiences and why this is important. And yeah, it's the right thing to do. I mean, listen, I was the face of diversity before it became a word. You know, I really was inclusive before I even knew what the damn word meant, only because I believe in people and I believe in everybody is equal. And I think that we're on the precipice of great things in this industry and where it's going. And really, we can't just do it alone. We do it together, and we bring all this talent that maybe didn't feel welcome before in under, you know, that's hiding out there, that's saying, hey, come work with us. So that's really what we're trying to do. And more so, this plays dear and really dear to my heart, because I grew up in the bowels of Nova Scotia, Canada. And if you can imagine starting a company over there as a woman 27 years ago. And then on top of that, I figured out I was gay. What a resume. So the reality is that, you know what, I know what it's like to be different, but I will say that the differences about me have brought me to where I am today. So I think that together, you know what, we make a pretty friggin' awesome stew, and that's what we're after here.
Amen. I love that. Thank you, Mandy. Yeah. And I'm also delighted to introduce our other and my other former current rock star co-chair. I almost called you former Pat. You're not going anywhere, Pat.
I'm not going anywhere. You keep going.
Pat Bacigalupo from Gap. Pat, can you share a little bit more about why you're here and why DEI matters to you?
Yeah, sure. I think, like everyone just said, I mean, the easy answer is that it's the right thing to do. Honestly, the more difficult to acknowledge answer is that, you know, I've certainly always considered myself a believer and supporter of DE&I. I'm proud to work for a company where it's part of our foundation. You know, and I check a couple boxes, right? I'm a woman and I'm old, so, or getting older, let's say. But really, after the death of George Floyd this summer, I was head down, focusing on getting our stores repaired, lamenting all of the damage. And, you know, one of my peers who's African-American, she got on a conference call with about 20 of us, and she spoke from the heart about how it impacted her, her feelings, her experience. I'm getting choked up. And it was a wake-up call for me that, you know, I needed to do more than just go through the motions. So, you know, I needed and wanted to get off the sidelines, use my position as a leader at Gap, as a board member at Connex to, you know, really do something and help make change. So, you know, from then it was a no-brainer to, you know, just jump in with both feet and get on board, and here I am.
Amazing.
Hey, I'm hugging Pat like crazy right now. Hug, hug, hug.
Right back at you. Thank you.
Well, brava, Pat and Mandy both, and thanks for being here. So we are here to formally launch our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. And Carrie, if you don't mind, go ahead and pull up our slides. I want to share a little bit, along with my amazing rock stars, we're going to share a little bit about the committee, starting with our mission, and we're going to cover a few goals as well. So I'll read this mission. You should see it on your screen here. But at Connex, we believe the power of diversity, equity, and inclusion are crucial to the growth of our association, collective businesses, and the FM industry as a whole. We will promote a diverse membership base and bolster the connection and collaboration of individuals and businesses with various backgrounds, experiences, and beliefs to advance the Connects community with tools, resources, and education. And this is a very powerful mission, and it's something that we're all incredibly committed to. And I will tell you that our ultimate mission as a committee is to not exist and to not have to share a mission with the rest of you. But while we exist, this is our mission, and we're going to go ahead and dive into some of our goals on the committee. So our first set of goals, Carrie, if you don't mind, next slide. Miss Pat will go ahead and share a little bit more about these goals. Go ahead, Pat.
Yep. So awareness and education. So we have two buckets under that. So the first, establish a foundation of DEI within our membership in order to create a Connects community that is safe, open, and welcome to all. So really sort of the goal where we're putting our words into action, whether it's for existing members or new members. And then the second goal, reveal the necessity and value of DEI in our FM industry as a whole. I'm gonna, I guess, borrow from Sherry a little bit. I kind of consider this our like what's in it for me goal. You know, Bill talked about it earlier about it being a strategic advantage, and then again, embracing diversity, whether you're a multi-site professional or suppliers, will create stronger companies. Diverse thoughts and experiences increases innovation and will help drive economic growth. So we want to create meaningful networking opportunities and identify ways to help grow business.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Pat. I'm going to go ahead and take the next group of goals, which really falls under professional development. And we have two goals around professional development. The first is to create personal and professional growth opportunities for individual members. And that's really important for everybody here and everybody in attendance, but also for our greater community within Connects. If you're not growing on an individual basis, then your companies aren't growing and we're not making enough of a difference. So we want to make those connections, and that pun was intended, make those connections, and ensure that we're offering opportunities for everyone to leverage the work that we're doing for growth. And then the next goal under professional development is to drive more diverse businesses with tools, education, training, resources to support growth. And I really love this one because I'm a big believer in strength in numbers. We can do a lot on the individual level, but really I'm a huge believer and have actually served on the board of an organization called Conscious Capitalism, purpose-driven businesses. I'm a believer that businesses who embrace the diversity, equity, inclusion opportunities really have a strongest chance of success. And we can all band together and again, strengthen numbers. That's where we're going to see the largest effect. And then our final bucket of goals will be covered by Ms. Mandy Ranahan. Go ahead, Mandy. Mandy Bear.
Mandy Bear. Okay, so I echo everything that was just said there from my two co-chairs. But I think that it's also something that we really need to understand that right now, you know, out in the field, we're really, you know, being faced with a systemic trade and labor shortage. The other thing is that we often look at that and we hear it all the time, but we're also needing to be cognitive of the fact that in-house talent, when we look at project management, FM, we're on the precipitous of modernization. We can't even fill the jobs that are manual right now. So I think that when we're looking at filling up that modernization of so many different types of automation and AI, we really got to look at, we need different types of people. We need different, how they think. You know, it might have been a person that looked and said, listen, I want to be a complete IT, but you know, we're like, hey, you fit in our bucket over here. And I think that, so recruitment is something that's just so important right now. And because of that, all of us, if you're a CEO out there, if you're a director, if you're on any level right now in any company, whether you're a retail, a multi-vertical, or a company like mine, what keeps you up at night? Talent keeps you up at night. So this is our way of really, truly opening up the doors and opening up the window for everyone to pass through, no matter what their background is, and looking and saying, there's a career for you at, in the FM reality. And I think that, but that goes to project construction and everything else that encompasses that. But as you can see, I'm very, very passionate about this because it's important. And I think that from this type of recruitment, in fact, I know it, is that you're going to start seeing a growth that maybe your company has not seen in many, many years, because what we're doing is we're regurgitating and recycling talent out there, and it is a problem. So if I haven't convinced you, call me.
Okay, and then aligned with that, and really where you're
Aligned.
going with that, Mandy, right, is the labor gaps, right?
Of course, this is the dessert right here. So, the reality is that it's really something that I know that everybody reads about, they talk about, but it really is a systemic issue. And the reality is that we really need to fix this and fix it now. And the only way to fix it is together, and it's really compiling, all of our different aspirations, but also, filling, as I once said to somebody that was the most amazing human being, said from Europe, said, Mandy, why in North America are you people so siloed? And I said, I'm not really sure why. And what that means is that we really, truly have great programs, great schools, really a lot of great different resources, but they're very siloed, including our industry. So this is what we're really looking to do, is really incorporate on bringing them together to solve this issue.
Awesome. Thanks for bringing us home there, Mandy Bear.
Okay.
So to kind of wrap up ourselves as a committee, we've shared with you our mission, we've shared with you our goals. We want to invite you all to get involved and to help join us in our mission and accomplish our goals. And Pat, do you mind sharing a little bit more about how people can get involved?
Sure. We definitely have a ton of work to do. So we hope you'll get involved, whether joining the committee, future task forces, just joining us for webinars, meetings, events, anything. So last week, Connect sent out an email naming the, inaugural members of the committee, who I thank very much for getting involved so quickly. But we're still open for more to join. So if you're interested, please go to connectsfm.com. Go to the councils and committees section in the About Connects tab and fill out the committee interest form. And then once you've completed it, you're going to get a link to a survey. So we're just asking you for some additional information. And then if you have any questions, just reach out to membership@connectsfm.com.
Thank you so much, Pat. And I would encourage all of you to spend a moment on the survey that you receive. It's not a vetting survey, meaning we're not going to include everyone. Everyone who wants to get involved, please, we would love for you to get involved in whatever capacity you can muster. But the survey is meant to help us organize our priorities, because as you've seen, and as Pat mentioned, we have a lot to do. We have some very lofty goals, and we're really determined to get some progress underway ASAP. So go to the website, fill it out. Thank you in advance. And thank you, my lovely co-chairs. I'm now really delighted to introduce our guest speaker. Sherry Darden is the CEO of Kursby. Can I run something by you? And Sherry has a broad background and has been doing this. I'm not going to tell everybody how long, Sherry, because it's been a long time. So I don't want to calculate, but I just want to make sure to reinforce your level of expertise here. You've been doing this a long time, and you really bring a strong level of expertise to the table. And Sherry has helped us formalize as a committee, and she's going to continue helping us along the way. And I will let you introduce really the content, but Sherry, I know you're going to be guiding us down the road of unconscious bias, which I'm super excited about, because we all have it. And I know we've all heard about it, and some of us have recognized it more than others in ourselves, but this is going to be a very light lifting, discussion oriented, and engaging content. So I'm going to invite my fellow co-chairs. We're going to go ahead and take ourselves off video so we can give Sherry the floor. And Sherry, go ahead and take it away. Yep, let's make sure you're unmuted this time too.
Yes, I'm going to make sure that. It's the time where I will make myself so profound. Can you guys hear me? So I make sure you can hear me. Okay,
You're good.
awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be today. My name is Sherry Darden, as it was explained earlier, and I am CEO and founder of Kursby, and that does stand for Can I Run Something By You? And before I do that, before I move any further, I want to make sure that I am sharing my screen with you, so that you guys don't have to say, hey, Sherry, where the heck are you? So there I am. So I want to welcome our time together. And Kim, I really appreciate you not telling everybody how long I've been in this, because when I start telling people how long I've been in this and when I started, I have to say that I was a child prodigy, and I started when I was 2 years old. In like the famous words of the nanny, you know, I'm forever 29. So that's my story, and I am sticking to it. So I want to welcome our time together, and I do this every time, and until he pulls me to the side and tells me stop doing it, I'm going to continue to do that. I met Bill about a year ago, and this is again part of George Floyd and all that good stuff. And he just realized, hey, we need to do something. We need to do something, but we don't know where to start. Sherry, can you come in and can you help us with that? So I will forever, ever, ever be grateful and indebted to Bill for taking this initiative, like so many have, but so many more are afraid to do that. And so we're going to be talking about assumptions, which is part of unconscious bias. And I want to start this series off in a very digestible way, because many times, myself included, we like to say, well, I'm not prejudiced, or I'm not biased, or I listen, I heard what you said. And many times we don't. And it's just because we just don't have that self-awareness. So we're just going to start with some really fun, light ways of talking about assumptions. And really, when we think about assumptions, when we're having conversations, when we're interacting, where Mandy was talking about, you know, what keeps you up at night? Are we even really listening to ourselves? And a lot of times we talk about, we need people, we need human capital, and how do we go about that? And it's kind of the old joke, and I'm going to get started here, but it just reminds me of the old joke of, you know, and it's variations of it, where the gentleman is in the middle of an ocean, and he's in a boat, and he's sinking, he's going, God, please send me somebody, and he sends somebody in a helicopter. God, no, God's going to come and help me. God, please send me somebody. And then he sends somebody in another boat. No, who's God? And, you know, on and on and on until he dies and he goes to heaven. And, you know, he was like, hey, God, I was waiting for you. He's like, I sent the boat, I sent the helicopter, all of those things. So when we think about unconscious bias, when we think about, you know, bringing in that human capital, we kind of have to maybe look at some of the assumptions that could be costing us into that station WIIFM, which is what's in it for me. So I really want to welcome our time here together. In just 1 second here, see if my screen will cooperate with me. Got a new computer here, so we're testing it out here. Okay, so I like to say, you heard me talking, but did you listen? Hearing and listening are two different things. Hearing is very passive. You know, you hear noises. You know, I got a next door neighbor here. I don't know what the heck they're doing next door, you know, but I heard a loud truck and I heard banging and all that good stuff. I heard it, but I really wasn't listening to really figure out whether it was a male or female, or whether they were drilling, whether they were hammering, all of those things, just kind of using that as an analogy. So we're going to really look into that. So today, really briefly, we're going to do this in digestible bites. So again, this is just a kickoff. So just keep that in mind with your Q&A and all that good stuff. We're going to invite you to ask those questions. Some we're going to say that's coming later, but then maybe some we'll be able to address. So we're going to create some awareness in surrounding the common occurrences around assumptions. We're going to even define assumptions. Then we're going to explore some outcomes associated with some of those assumptions. And then if we have some time here, we're going to discover some techniques to minimize when those actual occurrences arise.
Hey, Sherry, while you're taking that pause, I just want to point out that we can actually see 2 slides at the moment.
You
so I think you
can.
want to do the full screen view. There you go. Do the full screen so that we can only see the one that you're highlighting.
Wow, I didn't realize, because Zoom normally doesn't do that. So thank you so much.
No problem. It might be a display that you're choosing. And thank you, audience, for your patience.
Hey, so we're gonna
Yeah.
make it work. Okay, I was gonna wait for my screen, but as a trooper that I am, I brought some backup. Okay, so here's what I would like for you to do. Thank you so much, Kim. I really appreciate that. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to put down your cell phone. I'm going to ask you to stop checking your emails. I belong to Clubhouse. I had to snooze some of those alerts because it's, like ridiculous. And so it kind of takes away from my distraction. So I'm going to tell you a story and I want to see how well you listen. So knowing that you're going to be tested at the end of this, I'm going to see how well you listen. Okay. So once upon a time, there was a great city called Glum that stood beside a lake in the kingdom of Bung. In the center of the city was a castle where the king lived with his only daughter, Christina. Now, the king could no longer walk, but he was often seen being pushed around in a white wheelchair by his servants. Christina was a popular princess, happy and always willing to help others. The people of Bung often commented that she would make a really good queen. Now, it just so happened that as well as the king, his daughter, and his subjects lived in the kingdom of Bung 2 witches. Groga, an ugly, disfigured witch, lived on the other side of the lake in a dark, damp cave. Gwendolyn, a beautiful witch who wore a gown that sparkled with the lights of 1,000 crystals, lived in a house to the west. Now, on the 10th anniversary of Groga's arrival, the king was wheeled out onto the balcony where he dressed those gathered below. Who will rid the kingdom of my archenemy, Groga? He asked. Many men have been brave, have ventured forth on this mission before, but no one of those sent have returned. Do any of you have the courage to complete this deed? The crowd include knights from all around the surrounding lands. Their proud horses neighed at the ruler's words, but only one in the crowd spoke out, a stranger who had arrived the night before. I will kill her, said the stranger, in return for your crown. The king replied, that is too much to ask, but I will give you half of all of the gold in the city treasure if you rid the kingdom of her. The stranger accepted the offer and went to see the beautiful Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn was really impressed by the stranger's boldness, and she agreed to keep, in return, to help him with a share of the king's gold. She went into another room where she mixed a strange potion. She poured it into a small green bottle. This will give you the strength of 10 men, she said, handing the potion to the stranger. The stranger traveled from Gwendolyn's house to the dark caverns on the opposite side of the lake, where Groga, who had seen her fate in a crystal ball, was waiting. So, you have come as many men before you, seeking the king's favor? Now, they fought for many hours, but the witch was no match for her adversary. Eventually, tired and exhausted, she agreed to leave the kingdom forever. The stranger returned to the city to claim the promised reward. The end. Now, I want to see how well you listened. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pull up some polls and we want you to answer, and the answers are going to be anonymous. So don't be afraid of, oh, someone's going to see that I didn't do it right and I did it wrong. So these are going to be anonymous. So the first one is going to be true, and they're all true or false. So I used to love in college, true or false. You got a 50-50 chance of getting it right. Okay. So number 1, the city was called Bung. And then number 2, the city was ruled by an old king who could no longer walk. Again, true or false? And you don't have to wait for me to read these off. You can go ahead and start answering those. Number 3, the castle was in the center of the city. Number 4, Groga was a wicked witch who lived in a cave on the other side of the lake. Number 5, Princess Christina was very beautiful. Number 6, the stranger was a knight from far away. Number 7, the stranger wanted to be made king in return for killing Groga. Number 8, the king offered the stranger a great fortune instead. Number 9, the stranger agreed to give Gwendolyn half of his gold if he helped him. And then number 10, Groga had killed many other men before. I'll give you a couple of seconds to answer those, true or false. And then we want to see how well you listened. And Carrie, just, maybe when about 75 to 80% of people have responded, we can go ahead and close the poll out. We want to give people opportunity. So again, don't put much thought into it. Just from the story that you heard, just go ahead and answer true or false. Okay, if you want to go ahead and close out the poll. And if we can pull up our results. Awesome. Okay, so let's go through. I'm just going to scroll down here real quick. I only have a couple that were kind of like 50-50-ish. So I'm going to go through and give you the correct answer. So number 1, the city was called Bang. And the answer to that is false. The city was called Glum. The kingdom was called Bang. And sometimes when things sound so similar, we don't necessarily pay attention to which one is correct and which one is not. And so we'll kind of open this up here just a little bit as I come to go through these answers here. Okay, number 2, the city was ruled by an old king who could no longer walk. I love this one. And 80% of you, or 93% of you said true, and 7% of you said false. The 7%ers win. You guys win, yay! And I know some of you guys are probably going, what? Here's what I said. I said the king could no longer walk and that he was in a white wheelchair. So as we go into thinking about assumptions, many of us just assumed that because this person could no longer walk, could no longer, or was in a wheelchair, we sometimes associate that with age. And so sometimes when we think about things where we kind of misinterpret or assume the wrong thing, we have to kind of go back and wonder, why did this happen? And as we go through some of these, I will say a lot of times social media, TV, maybe even past experiences. But when we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we want to make sure that one of I'm writing a book, giving birth to a book. It's almost like giving birth. And it's called What You Said Is Not What I Heard. And so sometimes, because based upon our past, our conditions, our assumptions, also too, where we sometimes have selective listening, all that kind of stuff. I've done this story many times, and what many people will tell me is, well, you had that picture up of an old castle and that kind of thing. So we've come to our own conclusions. Okay, so this is great. Number 3, the castle was in the center of the city. And that is true. That is true. The only thing was not in the center of the city is where the 2 witches lived. And so again, when we think about, we keep hearing this center and west and east and all of that good stuff, we're going to talk about ways that we can not fall into assumptions that are many times in error. Okay. Number 4, it says Groga was a wicked witch who lived in a cave on the other side of the lake. And the answer to that is false. The answer to that is false. Now, probably 2 reasons that you probably got this incorrect. Some of you honed in on the cave, And then some of you said she was wicked. At no point did I say she was wicked. I said that she was ugly and she was disfigured. And then also too, the king wanted rid of her. Okay, so I hope some of you are kind of getting some of those aha moments of how sometimes where we see things and where do we get that? Think about the Wizard of Oz. You know, the ugly disfigured witch was the evil witch, and the pretty, you know, the pretty witch was the nice, you know, kind witch and all that good stuff. So again, these are just some of the things that maybe we need to kind of make a pause for the cause and kind of investigate those assumptions, if you will. Okay, so that goes into number 5, where number 5 says Princess Christina was very beautiful. And again, that's false. I said she was popular, and I said she had a pretty gown that had a lot of bling bling. Okay, so again, we take popular and being well liked and pretty clothing with something with a person being beautiful. Okay, number 6, the stranger was a knight from far away. And usually I kind of get a 50-50 on this one, and understandably so. But the true answer to that is false, based on my story. Okay, I just said the crowd included knights. We don't know if the stranger was one of those. We don't know if that person was a local or that was somebody from on the other side of the town. Okay, number 7, the stranger was made king in return for killing Groga. And the majority of you said true. And that's actually false. The stranger said that they wanted to be made king. Now, what we don't know is if, actually what the stranger said, I'm sorry, wanted the crown. So we don't know if the crown equals king, if the crown just means we like the jewelry, we like the bling of it. So do you see sometimes we can associate maybe something, an inanimate object, as status? Okay. All right, number 8, the king offered the stranger a great fortune instead. And many of you said true. And this is how sometimes we we kind of get caught in the trap of things when we think about advertisement and people getting us to buy and enroll in something. What the king said is, I will give you half of all of the gold in the city treasury. So, you know, we don't know if it was a room the size of a shopping mall that was filled with gold. We don't know if it was a closet filled with gold. Listen, we don't even know if in that treasury was just somebody's gold filling that fell out and they picked it up and put it in there, okay? So again, we assume that, okay, I'll give you all of the treasures because of maybe the way that it's worded or the way that it's described, that it could be something great, or it could be, we think about assumptions, something lesser. Something lesser. Okay. So the next one, number 9, the stranger agreed to give Gwendolyn half of all of his gold if she helped him. Half of all of the gold if she helped him. And the answer to that is false. It just said it's a fair share. And I don't know about you, if I'm not an honest person or I'm like get or get got, I could say fair portion is 70-30. Hey, 70-30 is fair because I'm the one that went out and fought the witch. And you may be assuming that it's 50-50 because that's your version of sharing. So again, kind of assumption. So sometimes when we think about assumptions and we think about unconscious bias, sometimes we have to question things that are said, and we're going to talk about the way to do that. Okay. And then lastly, number 10, Groga had killed many other men before. And that was 37% true and 63% false. And the answer to that is false. And here's what. Nowhere in my story said the others that tried to fight didn't survive, ran away, locked away in a closet. We just don't know. It's just they never returned. So are we thinking that they died? Are we assuming that they died? Are we assuming that they were captured? Are we assuming that they ran away? We just don't know. We just don't know. Okay. And so I am going to do something here just real quick. I don't know if it's there in the chat, but if you guys want to just put in the chat just one thought of what one assumption do you make of the stranger? What other assumption would you make about him? And I'll give about 10 seconds on that. What other assumptions do we even have of that stranger? What assumptions do we have of him? And while you guys are doing that, looking at the comments here, Eric said he's strong.
That's
Sarah
right.
said,
For you, Sherry, a greedy and eye-opening. Just making sure you can see the Q&A.
yes, yeah, I did. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Eric said the true false segments were eye-opening. Thank you so much. I hope so. Eric said he's strong. Sarah said, I assumed he was greedy. Is it Han? Oh my gosh. Anonymous said he's young. I'm going to give Han a gold star. This story was purposely written that I never referred to the stranger as he or she. But many times we think about that. I'm going to go back to my previous slide. I purposely picked a fictional, storybook, Snow White kind of looking. If you notice, I didn't allude, we don't know what period of time it is. We don't know if it was last year, last week, last century, all of those things. And then I also too purposely picked this picture because it was light. I could have done a draconian kind of castle, like Dracula, that kind of thing. Maybe if I had done a different picture, maybe your maybe your assumptions would have been a little different with this story. So I thank you, those of you that put in the Q&A and in the comments that this was eye-opening. I hope that this was eye-opening. And I tried to approach this so that we weren't just going in talking about white, black, lifestyle, age, all of those good things. Just kind of generally, how do we form assumptions? How do we form assumptions? Okay. Got a few minutes before I go on, a few seconds before we go on to the slide. I'm going to go on to the next slide. But if you guys have any other, again, reactions, comments, questions in the Q&A or in the chat, please go ahead and do so. And I will come back and I will take a look at that. Okay. So why do we hear things differently? Why do we hear things differently? Why do we hear things differently that was said? So when we think about assumptions, we have to take into effect lots of things. And so when we're thinking about equality or equity, and let me just say, and one of the things that we kind of talked about this as we were preparing for today, and one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we emphasize that this is not political. And the reason why I say it's not political, why do we hear things differently? That has nothing to do with politics. Who we are, who our parents were, our past experiences, what we have been exposed to. I like to say that I did a training session for a friend in Guam. And if you've ever been to Guam, there's a different majority of heritage in that particular area. And for the most part, other than the military base, they don't look like me. Okay. I happen to be 5'8". I think I'm shrinking. Last time my doctor said 5'7 3/4", but I digress. Maybe I was leaning to the side or something. I think I was trying to be light on the scale at the same time, but I'm fairly tall. And if you guys haven't noticed, I don't know if you guys have a camera, I am African American. And so I kind of stuck out a little bit. And so as I'm walking along the beach, I'm in between some trainings there, kind of got there early, time change and all that good stuff. And there were some young kids in a group of Asian descent, and they were giggling. They were giggling, and so they were kind of hee to themselves, and they're kind of looking at me, and I'm waving, and I'm like, okay, I know, and one of them pointed to me. This was several years ago. Pointed to me and giggled, and when they said this to me, I could understand that they did not know English. But they pointed to me and said in English, "Drop it like it's hot." and if you know me, if I dropped it, I wouldn't be able to pick it up. I'd have to call in the Mounties, in order to do that. My first reaction, because of who I am and my upbringing and the things that I have been subjected to, my first reaction was to be offended. And I'm talking longer than my reaction. So my reaction was like momentary. So I started to get offended. And then what I did is I was like, you're assuming that they're meaning something bad to you. What I had to do is take my assumptions out to say, oh, they're talking to me like I'm some video vixen, which is what we see, in the videos. Again, why do we see and hear things the way that we do? But it was the video, that was the only way that they were able to equate me with an African-American woman, that they were wanting to say, hey, I see you, not in a bad way, but I see you. And so when we hear things differently than what is said, sometimes those are assumptions. And so what Mandy came in and said, talking about, trying to find great help and great manpower and just the right thing to do and to just get along. Let's just take everything out, just to get along and give everybody equal playing field on just being in each other's lives, just being in each other's lives. But as we talk about this with Connects and finding an expanded amount of vendors and resources. So when we talk about what's in it for us, we want to maybe sometimes drop our assumptions because we lose out. I remember talking to one particular person, and they had pretty much sized me up. It wasn't always necessarily just about my race, but it was about what they assumed, how old I was, and what my background was without even talking to me. And as we begin to have a relationship, I wondered why they gave me this look. They had this look on their face. I'm like, what's wrong? And they finally said, I just want to be honest with you. I messed up. And I was like, what did you mess up on? I'm thinking they're talking about current. I did not give my chance to get to know who you really were. And if I had, you would have saved me X amount of dollars, because I also serve as a subject matter expert in some HR law situations there. And they just said, but I just didn't give you a chance because I thought when I saw you, I assumed. So do you guys see how this is something that we just want to make sure that we keep in perspective? Okay, gonna go up here just real quick. Don't see anything in the chat. And I don't see anything in Q&A. Okay, so when we talk about assumptions, when we talk about good old assumptions, what are assumptions? Get finicky here. I want to give a definition. I'm kind of a wordsmith. I like to, based off, again, assumptions. Assumptions is a thing that is accepted as true or certain to happen without proof. Without proof. I'm working with one of the larger companies, larger counties here in the Texas area. And we just did a session earlier today. And we were talking about, it's a diversity, equity, inclusion series. And one particular gentleman just said, we watched, if you guys have seen this is a great thing on assumptions too. John Quinones, who is a Texas native, and What Would You Do? He does those series of kind of a shock series of that, and without proof. And so his reaction to that video, and I said, but you assumed that this person had this view of things. Would you have asked Because here's what we do based on our assumptions. If we don't ask questions and if we don't dispel those assumptions, sometimes our reaction or our lack of reaction to a situation is wrong. It is like if you assume because I scream that I hurt because I just hit something on my body, and you come and rush and give me a Band-Aid to put on my pinky finger when I've stubbed my toe, that doesn't help. And I'm kind of putting it in generalized terms here, but this is why we have to really, really address our assumptions. Okay, so here's what I want you to keep in mind here, because we've got it. I want to open it up for Q&A and some other things here, and I want to be respectful of your time. It really is important to point that our assumptions, which falls in line with stereotypes and prejudices, is that they all relate to our values over time without merit. Over time and without merit. Because if you've actually done your investigation and you've shown that the decision that you've made is based on accurate and unbiased investigation, then they aren't assumptions. No, we no longer call them assumptions. They are not unlawful. So I don't want anybody to think, well, you just can't make me change the way that I think, and I'm going to think the way that I think, and nobody, that is fine. There is nothing that is unlawful about your assumptions. Because listen, we're allowed to think whatever we like about anyone. However, what I did, I can't remember, gosh, as a trainer and a speaker, he's like, I did this 2 weeks ago. And I call it TFAR. It's an acronym, TFAR, T-F-A-R. T stands for thoughts, F stands for feelings, A stands for actions, and R stands for results. Our thoughts become feelings, and our feelings become actions. And every action that we do, there is a result. So as we think about assumptions, I'm going to ask you, my background is accounting, and I had to change that because I talk too much to be an accountant, is when I help my clients with budgets, they start talking about, I want to make this, I want to sell this, I want to do that. I said, let's time out. At the end of the day, thinking about a financial statement, because these assumptions affect our financial statements, at the end of the day, what is your result? And your result is profit, not sales, not revenue, but profit. So when we think about it, I want you to back into that TFAR. What kind of result do you want? So again, I keep picking on Mandy, but Mandy really hit home in saying that, what keeps us up at night? So that result is, I want to go to sleep. So if I want to go to sleep, what kind of actions do I need to do? I may need to expand my horizon on my contractors, my employees. And we go back and we back and back. And then it starts back to, what am I thinking? Or what do I need to think in order to get that result when we think about assumptions? Okay. So we are allowed to think whatever we like about anyone. However, once it starts acting with the prejudices, we may be behaving in a discriminatory way, which could be breaking some laws, or could be breaking against and working against and going against our organization's policies. We work so hard in a day-to-day world. And in everything that has happened to us in the last 12 months, it seems like 15 years ago. I said to somebody, and I may have said it to the Connects group. I said, "Is it March already?" I mean, because it feels like it's been a world already, and we're just into the second month of 2021. But I'm going to invite you, and I say all that to say, because we're in such turmoil, our weather, we're going through a deep freeze, and you people in Canada, and you people in New York, I know it's cold. But it's like 32 here in Dallas. That's cold for us this time of year at this time of day. Okay. So with everything that we're being so distracted about, is it going against our policies? So I'm going to ask you with everything that's going in. We got snow, we got ice, we got COVID, we got, uncivil rest, we've got all of these things. Let's go back to the basics. And almost to the point where poor Kim was kind of frustrated with me as we were going through these and talking about mission statements and going back and revising because we had a mission statement, but our mission statement and the things that we had proposed to do weren't meshing. So I'm going to invite you to go back and look at your organization's policies and your organization's mission. Okay. So acting upon them without merit, acting upon them, assumptions, stereotypes, prejudices, leads to missing dollars. I gave you an example of a friend of mine. She missed out. We assume that maybe someone is a small business who is a woman-owned, can't handle construction. And if anybody can't see, I want you guys to look at Mandy's picture that she's got there. That's an assumption. Or to assume that maybe someone, we're going to talk about all diversity, we're going to talk about race, but diversity means everything. So just assuming, I've been guilty of it. Assuming that someone who is young, well, what do they know? They haven't been around a while. Well, they may not have been around a while, but they've been around not long enough to gather old, outdated ways.
Jerry, maybe they're just thinking I'm just really stylish. That's what I'm thinking.
I love it. I love her. One of these days, I'm going to be able to see you and give you a big hug. Okay, so I'm going to wind down here and I'm going to let you guys, I'm going to pull the panel back up here in just a second, but I just want to end with this. You guys see two pictures. I like stories because we can kind of connect things. Top left-hand corner, you see a pot roast. Okay. Bottom right-hand corner, you see a pan with fish, and they kind of mean the same things, but again, depending on which lens you see, and that's going to be part of diversity, our assumptions, the lens through which someone sees the world or situation. You guys have probably heard the pot roast joke before. It may have been a ham, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway, so just get ready. So Sunday is pot roast day. Every Sunday, mom gets out. She gets out in the kitchen and she makes pot roast. Husband sees her every Sunday, just like clockwork. Pulls out the roast, puts seasoning on it, throws the vegetables in a pan. Before she puts the pot roast in a pan, cuts off both ends and then puts it in the pan. Been watching her, you usually don't try and question the cook because kind of leave them alone. But decides, one day I'm just going to ask her, honey, why are you cutting off a perfectly good part of a pot roast? She said, honey, really never thought about it. Just as a little girl growing up, standing next to my mom in the kitchen, that's how she made pot roast. Picks up the phone, calls the mother-in-law. Ma, why do you cut off a perfectly good part of a pot roast and throw it out? Honey, that's a really good question. I'm just going to tell you, just growing up as a little girl, I watched my mom. That's how we make pot roast. That's our recipe for pot roast. Not satisfied with that, he picks up the phone and calls the grandmother. He says, Granny, why do you cut off perfectly good part of the pot roast? And he's just kind of assuming that she's going to tell him the same thing that his wife and his mother-in-law. And she says, honey, that's easy because my pot was too small. But boom. Assumptions. Why do we make assumptions? I myself have to watch the assumptions that I make because I grew up hearing something that my mother said. And I'm the youngest of 4 kids and my parents were in their 40s when they had me. So I was a really big oopsie. So we kind of skipped a generation in there. So some of the things that they would think and they would say, I heard and I took in without questioning them. That's an assumption. In our workplace, who trains us? Our predecessor. Who trained our predecessor? Their predecessor. So we begin to learn these behaviors as to how we screen our employees, how we hire employees, how we screen things, how we react to things. Our values are based on not necessarily question them, but these are just things that we do. I'm going to end with the story of the fish in the frying pan. On the creek bed, I'm from Kansas City, Missouri. I still love my Chiefs. I still love my Chiefs, but I used to fish with my dad. You know, it was the Missouri River, you know, so we go on the creek bank and we would fish. So I kind of see that analogy. But this story says there's two different parties that are on the creek bank and they're fishing. And one guy keeps throwing the fishing line out there and he's getting these big, huge, gigantic fish, taking them off the hook and he's throwing them out, back at him. Other guy on there can't catch a fish to save his life. Finally, he turns around perplexed and says, hey, why are you throwing out all of these big, beautiful fish? Pulled up his pan and says, I can't find one small enough to fit into my pan. Think about that. We say we want these big fish, but have we changed our frying pan to be able to hold? We want our business to be worldwide and big and all of these wonderful things. But have we changed the size of our frying pan to accommodate what we say we want? Are we saying what we want and are what we're doing, or are they two different things? So we have to change our assumptions. So I'm going to challenge you when you ask somebody, why are you doing it this way? And they say, oh, just because, tell them pot roast. And when they're thinking too small, say frying pan, okay? So I want to thank you guys. I want you guys to think about, if you said it, what did it mean? So when we're thinking about these things, about assumptions, and also too, I want you to flip on the other side and say, if it was said to you, how would you take it? Because again, we want to kind of change those assumptions. And so for time purposes, I'm just going to go and ask you here, because I want to allow time here, about 4 minutes in. What have you learned about yourself in this exercise and in our about 30 minutes together? What have you learned about yourself? And I want you to write down somewhere, just kind of sit and think about it. I'm going to give you a few seconds here. What have you learned about yourself? And I want you to say, you know, I used to think blank, but then as a result of talking to and having this conversation with Sherry today, I've learned. And now I know, because what? Because if we don't really assess what we've learned and how we've grown or something that's new, when we know better, we do better. And we have to stop and know what we've acknowledged so that we can learn and do better later on. So I'm not going to name any names because I don't want anybody to be called out. I will say anonymous. So in the Q&A, if you guys want to put that in there, I used to think, so it could be something as, I used to think I was a really good listener. Now I learned I just make a lot of assumptions and tune out. Now I know I have to pay better attention because I could be missing some things, just kind of giving that as an example. And as you are doing that, I am going to invite you, when we're thinking about assumptions, to ask questions. So as we begin to draw a conclusion, charge ourselves to ask questions so that to see whether the assumptions that we are making are true or not. Okay. So I'm going to go up here real quick because I'm going to turn this again in a second here. I'm going to turn it back over to Q&A, but give me just one sec. Everybody in Q&A, no questions. Someone, let's see here. I want to answer that. I think we're going to leave that one to when we open it up to Q&A. Okay. No questions, no thoughts, no concerns, no comments, no yes, but Sherry, you just don't know my life. Okay. All right. Since you guys are being really, really quiet, so here's what I'm going to ask you to do when we think about assumptions. I see one Q&A just came up here. Reframe. When we draw conclusions and we make these assumptions, just create a different way of looking at the situation. You may be right, but I'm just going to ask you in the interim to charge yourself to question yourself. So when we're looking at applicants, I will be honest and transparent with you. I had a client, she said, here's the reason why I need you, Sherry. She said, I found myself, she had to charge herself. She said, I found myself when I'm looking at applicants, when I look at their name, my first question to myself is, am I going to have a hard time understanding them? That's an assumption. We don't know that. We don't know whether it's correct or not. Again, it's just based on past experience. So she said, working with you now has caused me to change to say, I need to throw that assumption out the window. Okay. So it just kind of helps make the speaker feel a little bit better about uncovering their own unconscious bias. Someone says, I used to think that I didn't make many assumptions as a trained librarian who wants to get people what they need without them necessarily knowing what they want. That's awesome. But the fairy tale was a very good example of the context. We have experiences with fairy tales that makes us assume traits that may or may not be true. Absolutely, absolutely. And I will tell you, television is one of them. And so as I go up here and I look at this Q&A, and then I'm going to bring the panel back up here, is during the whole pandemic and binge watching during the holidays. And one of the ones that I started binge watching was Queen of the South. And the reason why I wanted to watch Queen of the South is because it's depicted here in Dallas, Texas, which is where I currently reside. And I found myself, because there was a lot of things that were going on next to American Airlines Arena, which is our main arena here. And I found myself just kind of going by looking at American Airlines Arena going, I wonder if there's a drug deal going on by there. Or I wonder if that person's doing that. And I begin to say, okay, I can see this is a really dangerous thing to be doing. So we have to be mindful of that. Okay. Love to connect with you guys. If you have any questions, I know sometimes it's kind of intimidating to ask questions and that kind of things. Please shoot me an email. I'm at sherry@sherrydarden.com if I can help you out with anything or just kind of walk you through that. Or if you want to challenge me on the story, it didn't happen like that, I'd be happy to go ahead and do that with you, okay? So we're going to open up some questions. And so I'm going to open it up to the panel because I'm going to pull them on the carpet because I know as a committee and those who are leading this cause, we can't ask people to do what we are not willing to do, right? So I'm going to ask you, what did you get from this session?
Well, I'll go first. I'm glad I wasn't on camera because when you were doing the poll, like one of the answers that I had, Sherry, is I learned that not all kings are old. That was the first thing that came to my mind because I was like, oh, I did that one incorrect. No, really, that level of self-awareness, Sherry, is where it starts. And I can't remember who said it. I think it was Simon Sinek or Adam Grant, one of those influencers
yes.
about awareness. They say, ask questions and listen to the answer like you're wrong. Like the answer that you're expecting is the wrong answer, and listen to the answer like you believe that you're wrong. Mm-hmm. And I like what you said at the end there about it's not about being right or wrong. So often we're holding on to this, and that's why this has been so politicized, and why so many things, healthcare, everything's politicized now, but why people are holding on to it. It's about being right or wrong. And, really it's more about opening your mind and listening and being okay with, well, my initial assumption was incorrect. And it doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means that you were, you made an assumption, and we all make them. So I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Do you know how, so when we think about the bottom dollar, the WIFM, think about if Colonel Sanders had been offended by his initial recipe of fried chicken. Formula 409. How many versions of 409? If they had been offended, oh, you just don't know what you're talking about, I'm just going to put it out there. They would have been in lawsuits and they would have lost money. So you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. How about you, Miss Mandy? I want to hear from the
Well, let me tell you, I'll tell you the thing that I love, and I kind of echo a little bit of what KG was saying, is that we are born hearing that kings are old. We're born thinking that every princess has blonde hair. We're right?
Yes.
And so there is this pattern of thought that takes us to our adulthood until somebody goes, this isn't it. So it really, it brings us back to everything that we keep talking about. It's about education. And also being vulnerable enough to say we all have it, because that's how we were brought up. All of us saw it, we heard it, we're around it. And I think it is that vulnerability, I think, is the part that hits home with me, with guys, gals, whoever, is to be able to say, your assumption is not wrong, it's real. It's real.
Yes.
And then after you admit that vulnerability, you're able to, switch the subjective card on to, wow, why did I think that way? And how do I change that pattern of thinking? So that's my, 3 cents.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sherry, I have a question for you. So I think even from what Mandy was just saying, it's almost a constant learning, and it feels like it's almost implicit unconscious bias. So, would you say it's more about learning and focusing on ways to diminish it versus trying to think that you're going to be able to completely rid yourself of unconscious bias?
We can't do that. We can't. And so I'm not telling anybody to be perfect, and it's not even perfect. Some of the good things, our warning systems, it only takes, I'm telling off on myself here. I convinced my brother is 17 and a half years older than myself. And I remember at 6 years old, I convinced him that I could throw a firecracker during 4th of July. I was so mesmerized by the sparkle, it went off in my hand. So from that assumption that it would not go off in my hand and hurt, I now know you need to throw that before it goes off. Does that make sense? I'm being silly about that. So I think sometimes old assumptions and knowing that they're wrong helps us learn in the future. So we will never be free of assumptions. We all have past experiences, good, bad, or indifferent. I think my call to everyone is be slow to assume.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing, what when you assume what it makes out of you and me. So it's just to have, instead of going with the assumption, knee-jerk reaction of going with the assumption, have a knee-jerk of going, wait a minute, do I know this to be true? That's one of the things I say in my coaching. When people are like, I can't do that. Do you know this to be true? Do you know this to be true? And when 9 times out of 10, we can only say, well, this happened to me once. So we need to say, okay, just because this happened to you once doesn't mean it's going to happen to you forever. Like the firecracker, it was my mistake, and you learn from it. So yes, I don't think we can ever do that. I think it's human nature. It's human nature. And I will never ask anybody not to be human.
That's a really great question, Pat.
Yep.
A question that others had in mind, because this isn't a fix it session. All of a sudden you snap your fingers and all of a sudden everybody's good and free of bias. It's always going to exist. I love that question. So I want to make sure that the rest of the attendees know that the Q&A is open. If there's any additional questions, either about Sherry's presentation and content or about the DEI committee as a whole, we'd be glad to answer those questions, whether it's on an individual basis or just a general basis. Please use the Q&A box to do that. I hope this gave you a little bit of a taste of the kind of content we're committed to bringing forth as a committee. That saying, the first step to recovery is admittance. A lot of this foundation, well, it's true. A lot of this foundational items is so incredibly important. And I thought of this when you were asking your question, Pat, about how we as a committee and those folks who have been involved in the committee from the beginning, and as you mentioned, those were people who were very proactive about getting involved early on. They might have seen or heard some of this from us, but really some of our side sessions between myself and Pat and Mandy have been sort of bonding experiences because we have so much more in common than we have different. Yeah. And this isn't to say that, well, this committee is only for people who are minorities or people who are women or people who are old or people. I mean, that's not the case. We have to have that dialogue and that connection with everyone who's different and the same as us, and have those sort of like come to Jesus moments together. And we really enjoyed that. And I think that's a big part of our progress as humans, but also how we can leverage that in the committee. is finding those alignments together and sharing the biases that we continue to experience together, and pointing those out.
I'm just going to go out on a limb and say, I know for me, and I will involve myself as I am invited in this goal, but I want us to get to a point where we can talk about our differences until it doesn't make a difference in the workplace. We're different. And I think when we said we're not trying to politicize, listen, I'm a Black woman all day, every day. It is what it is. And so for you to tell me that you don't see my color is denying me who I am. What I'm asking you to do is not let that be a deciding factor as to whether you work with me or not.
Yeah.
Someone's lifestyle, someone's physical impairment, you know, if it doesn't make a difference as to how we do work together, then it shouldn't make a difference. And so that's part of the assumptions that we're trying to create, so that, listen, it is a win-win situation. It's not just a political thing to put, or just a tag thing, you know, because a lot of people try and get on the bandwagon because it's a fad, you know, right now it's the designer of the day. It's just, listen, let me say, it makes life so much easier for you.
Yeah.
When we try and impart some of these assumptions, it makes us angry. It's distraction. You know, I don't know about you, but, you know, I put on COVID-19 and then I don't sleep, and that's put on the belly fat, and I'm just not happy. So I'm just going to get rid of baggage.
Pandemic pounds.
Literally. Yes. Absolutely.
And Sherry, I know you have data around it actually positively affecting business.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you've done a lot of research across this. I think that might be of interest to our members as well. Is, you know, I think people sense that intuitively, and they sort of see that more companies are getting involved. And there's, you know, like Ulta Beauty, one of our board members, Anthony, his company just announced a huge investment in diversity, equity, inclusion. But the other side of this is, not only is it the right thing to do, but there's really some benefits that folks can see, right, Sherry?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Absolutely. There is a question in the Q&A, and this person says, will this committee partner with other Connects committees on their professional development initiatives that are already in progress to ensure streamlined professional development across the membership? Great presentation and such an amazing passion of each of you.
Well, we'll love the compliment. Take that.
Well, I took the first part, but the last part, but the first part's for you guys.
Yes. So yes, that is a part of our strategic goals, and we're at the stage right now where we're really outlining the goals, and we need all of you who are getting involved to help us prioritize how we're going to accomplish those goals. And we've already thrown around some ideas on what that looks like, but we anticipate hitting the ground running. And a part of that is, again, that strength and numbers. We've talked about maybe talking to the Women in Action community committee, young professional, you know, there's other groups within Connects that we could potentially leverage. So absolutely. And any ideas that you all have as committee members on what that looks like, given what their initiatives are more than welcome. I just want to point out before I dismiss it, this was an impactful call, time well spent. So bravo, Sherry.
Yep, there's another one in there. If you guys somebody wants to look at that one and see if you want to address it.
Yeah, how do you diffuse the initial response? You know, why do we need this? And that's actually a really good question. We actually don't get that response very often, but I know we have gotten that response. You know, why now? I think what we as a committee have always felt is, oh my gosh, we have so much ground to make up because we're behind. All of our discussions are, man, we have always known this is important and we really need to prioritize this now. But I would defer to Bill on, you know, the Connects' response. Why do we need this, Bill? Why is this important?
Yeah, well, as hopefully I said at the top, or tried to articulate at the top, if you look at strategically what our organization wants to accomplish, starting from the competitive advantage all the way down to being a place where people belong, and this being the right thing to do, it's woven throughout if we weren't addressing this in this way, it would be a huge gap in what Connects could be and what Connects is. And it's the right thing to do. We know that there's going to be, and the one question you alluded to that we got is, you know, is this political or are we political? Connects is not a political organization, and we're not going at this in a political way at all. But I think when you saw the way Sherry portrays this, you get a subject matter expert, there's a very interesting angle to look at all these issues in a way that's very powerful. And granted, there's a selfish reason for the association because we want to grow, and we want to grow across all verticals and across all the various diversity type of issues we look at. So we are open. If you do have concerns or question or whatever, one of the things we don't want to become is to shut out and say, hey, if you've got a question of Yannick or of the DI committee, don't ask or stay away. We absolutely don't want that. So let us know, come into the conversation, because at the end of this, you ought to feel like you belong at Connects.
And I mean, Bill, just to add, I would also say that, prior to this summer, even members were asking for this type of committee. So, we are trying to, meet members' needs. And this was something that I believe you were hearing about quite a bit.
And the response has been overwhelmingly positive before and after the announcement. And so there is I think you could call it a groundswell of support that we're getting beginning on this.
Yeah, and our hope, I'll just chime in here too. Our hope is, a lot of times people would say, especially supplier businesses, hey, this is something that's really important to us, but how do we get more involved? And our goal really is to bring some tools forward, some resources forward that you can apply immediately to your business. And that's an overarching value proposition of Connects as a whole. And that's a big reason why you all are members, is because Connects is providing tools for your businesses. It's not just about new business opportunities and new customers. It's also about growing, giving you some tools and a toolkit to grow your own business and to leverage those things. So we're kind of fulfilling our membership promise where that's concerned as well. All right, great question. We probably have time for maybe one more question, but while we wait for any other Q&As coming in, I would be curious, Sherry, what's your view of Connects and its involvement with DEI? Again, I know you work across numerous organizations. I'm assuming facilities maintenance maybe is a newer one to you.
It is, but if you look at the umbrella of the membership, you have retail and you have manufacturing and you have pavement and all that good stuff. I've worked with railcar manufacturing. I've worked with city government. I've worked with federal government. I work a lot with a lot of 501c3s. I've worked with the state of California. I love California, trying to move there, but it is different. The way all different, as to way things are done, rules, regulations. And so what I love about what I do in diverse industries and just geographically diverse is there are things you can do and can't do in certain states and jurisdictions and that kind of thing. So I want to say that working with Connects is going to be great because we are going to approach it in such, I was going to say unassuming way, but we need to stay away from that word, but in such an unassuming way that we are just trying to give you the tools to get started. We are not coming into your home to tell you what you need to do. I will be the last person to do that because I don't want you to come into my home because you wouldn't get in to do that. So that's not the point we're trying to make. The point we're trying to make is here's some situations that we can make better. Yeah. Listen, if you feel like things are perfect for you, great. But there are so many others that see that there is always room for improvement or they need help. A lot of times things are not done. And I'll come at it from a facilities management standpoint. It was a small company where I was in accounting, but somehow I got adopted into the maintenance part of it. Is that, there are things where you see, okay, I'm going to use myself as an example. I just plopped down $1,500 for a hot water heater. That hurt. But here's what I did. I started to hear, I have gas, hot water heater. I started to hear the gas fire up more often because I wasn't using hot water, but I would hear it fire up. That let me know that there was a leak somewhere. But I got a little lazy because I have a pier and beam foundation. So that spill was going underneath. I'm like, who cares? It's not dealing with my foundation yet. But then I started to see where the dripping was. One, I looked at my water bill and I was like, I fainted. So what we're talking about here is there are little leaks that we're just trying to say, hey, be mindful. It may be a little leak now, but I had to spend 2 days in a deposition as a subject matter expert on some HR law. And the first thing they ask is, when did you first have notice that something was going wrong?
Right.
So coming at it from a leaking standpoint,
Oh,
if I had really taken care of it, yeah. I mean, it's just a great.
Analogy.
So, one of my models is it's better to be proactive instead of reactive. Our world is changing day by day. First,
Yeah.
they told us no mask. Then they told us mask. Then they said N95, but then don't use the mask. Now they're telling us double mask. Let's do this. Let's do that. Let's do this. So our world is changing. I'm just using that as an example. So all we
Yeah.
really want to do is just give you some tools, some awareness tools, and some tools to go back and implement at the way that you see fit. We are by no means trying to tell you what you're doing is right, what you're doing is wrong. We're just saying, here's the situation. Here's some different ways to look at it. And here's some tools that you can use if you so choose.
So real quick, we have 2 questions. I know we have a hard stop in 2 minutes. So first of all, there's a question about, I consider facilities maintenance not to be a very diverse field. Can the DEI team help open up more opportunities for diversity within the field? And the answer is yes. And Mandy, that's really going to be your task force and your goals that you're going to be running with.
I'm on it.
Awesome. But then I also want to recognize that there's a comment about the timing of this and experiencing negative pushback about this topic. And that it's race motivated, and we're only talking about it due to the current social climate, and that couldn't be further from the truth, and which is true. And breaking through to the peers that have predetermined thoughts is a difficult bridge to cross. And I could not agree more. This has always been a problem that's existed, but as Pat mentioned, we've capitalized on the opportunity to really be able to bring this forward with gusto. Unfortunately, because of some of the current events. But diversity, equity, inclusion is not just about race. And Sherry, tell us, what is diversity, equity, inclusion?
Well, I'm going to say it's going to be one of those, it's subjective, but let me just answer it this way for time purposes. Diversity means being different. Equity means everyone wants the equal chance at the table, and inclusion means we're bringing everybody to the table. So it's not just about race. It gets a little politicized again about the race.
Yes.
It's about age. There's age discrimination. I was fresh out of college and was told, what do you know? You're too young. You're wet behind the ears. Sometimes we dispel what an elder person can do about that. Sometimes we want to dispel the myth that someone who has a learning disability or a physical disability, geographical disability, people are discriminated against because of where they're actually located. Has nothing to do with the ability to do the work, especially in the age of electronics and remote and all that good stuff. So diversity means a wide variety of things: woman-owned business, minority-owned business, veteran-owned business. Veterans are considered to be a minority under Title VII. So it's not just about that. It's over 40, it's age, it's sex, it's race, it's religion, it's physical impairment, it's veterans, it's women being pregnant. I mean, it's all things. And that's what I mean when we talk about inclusion. It's everybody. Everybody has, from somebody else's viewpoint, a shortfall. And so what we're saying is, whatever shortfall you see, let it not be a shortfall when it comes to getting to the table and doing work together.
Well, that's a great way to end it. Thank you so much. Bill, do you want to see us off?
Yeah, real quick, again, thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Mandy. And certainly Kim and our committee leadership. Hopefully, and I know our audience did, I had a lot of aha moments this afternoon. Great discussion, and this is just the beginning. So thanks again for joining us, and we will have the replay available at connectsfm.com. So with that, I'll let everyone wave, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.